All right, welcome everybody to Kingdom Talks. I've got Logan Barone on and Claryssa's co-hosting. Thank you, Claryssa, for contacting Logan and getting this all set up. It's been an honor to have him being co-host. And Logan, I've watched you for quite a few years now, and you've been going down a road that I've been going down in the background, and now I get to bring it to the forefront. So happy to have you on, and I have no clue where this conversation is going to go, but I'm
Awesome.
sure it's going to be good. Sure, it'll
Those
be
are the
good.
best the best conversations are the ones with no agenda and we let them flow. So thanks for having me on. I'm looking forward to this and yeah, it should be good.
Yeah. So, Clarissa, I'm curious if you got any questions right out of the gate that you want to go down, or
I do have actually, sure.
all right.
So Christianity or the church or the ecclesia, whatever term you want to use, right now we're having a moment, I believe, in large part because the systems that have all been built on the lie of separation, they are and they will eventually all fail. Humanity, they will all crumble. I know people are looking for the real, they're looking for the authentic. They're looking for really the truth about who God has been all along, what union looks like. And these systems, they can't hold up to that into eternity because they're predicated on the lie of separation. I'm curious to know, how do you see the fullness of Christianity and what would be considered the New Age movement? And I'm using terms that I think you understand the gist of what I'm saying, but the fullness of what the movement of Christianity and relationship with God, relationship with Yeshua, and coming into a more of a fullness with the New Age movement.
Yeah,
So, and
great,
before you
great
go
question.
down that road, Logan, so keep that question in mind and come around to answer that. But in the process, give us a little bit of your background and where you've come from, because I know for a few people watching, they're not going to know who you are. And
Sure.
so, give a little background and then wind up with what Clarissa just asked, because it's a good question.
Yeah. So my background actually goes pretty well with that question. So I was actually born into the Catholic Church. I was a Catholic for the first 11 years of my life. And everyone I knew was Catholic. My family was Catholic, went to mass every Sunday, went to a Catholic school, and that kind of set the ground for my spirituality. I had a deep love for Jesus and a reverence for the scriptures and the sacraments from a very young age. So that was my worldview. That was my programming for the first 7 years of my life. And then, like I said, when I was around 11, that all changed because my mom had a friend who was a Protestant and was sending her like some videos from some pastor on TV. And his message was a lot different than anything we knew as Catholics. And my mom was like, you know what? I'm going to start listening to this particular pastor, some pastor with a mega church or something. So she started listening to him and she's, man, these messages are just refreshing. They're a lot different. They're entertaining. They're funny. And so I want to go and check this pastor's church out. I want to go and see what this new way of Christianity, because it was new to us, was all about. And so without telling my dad, because my dad was like the strictest Catholic in the family, the most devout, she's like, hey, she was talking to me. She said, hey, Logan, why don't we, like on one Saturday, why don't we sneak over to this church? Because it was close to where we were living at the time. Why don't we sneak over to this church and see what's going on? Because these messages are just so different and they're so easy to listen to. And so long story short, we ended up going over there and we both fell in love with it. As an 11-year-old kid, I was very entertained by the concert style worship and the free coffee and stuff like that, free popcorn or whatever it was. And so we got sucked into that, and that was the beginning of us eventually walking away from Catholicism. Eventually, we talked my dad into checking this church out, and it took months, but he was like, we at the time we were thinking that it was a miracle that God had encountered him in a dream and told him to leave the Catholic Church and to start coming to church with
Wow.
us. And so my whole family became Protestant. We started going to this church. And then I left my Catholic school that I was attending at the time, and I started going to a Christian, it was still a Christian school, just it was like a non-denominational school. And when I became Protestant, I fell in love with the Bible because everyone around me was talking about the Bible and quoting scripture. And I couldn't really do that as a Catholic because I didn't know the Bible as a Catholic. I knew the sacraments and I knew going to mass and the rituals, but I didn't know much about the Bible. And so now that I'm a young evangelical, I'm reading the Bible, and this would have been about 2012. And around 2012, a lot of people were thinking that we were living in the end times and that 2012 was going to be it. The rapture was going to happen. And so I got drawn into studying Revelation. So the book of Revelation was actually one of the first books I
Yeah.
started to read and study, got into eschatology and dispensationalism, and just started, like I said, just reading the Bible all the time. I was reading it in school, and then I'd come home from school and study it. And then by the time I got to high school, I was leading numerous Bible studies, very involved with my church. And over the years, I just continued to grow in passion for Jesus and for ministry and evangelism. And by the time I was a senior, I decided that I wanted to go into ministry full time and become a pastor. After graduating high school, I took a year off and I was praying and fasting, and I got involved with a local ministry, and we were just super busy with ministry stuff, street evangelism, healing services. And during that time, I was debating whether or not I was going to go to college and get some kind of theology degree or ministry degree. There was an opportunity for me to join a local pastoral internship at this church. And the cool thing was this pastoral internship was connected with Oral Roberts University. And so the pitch was, if you do our internship, you can be a full-time online student at ORU and get a degree in whatever you want that we offer through this program. And so I said, oh, this is awesome. I definitely will check this out. So I went to what do they call it? When you go and see if it's right for you. I can't think of the name, but anyway, I said, this is it. So I started that. And after a year of doing the internship, I said, this is good, but I want to finish school a little bit earlier. And so I just want to be a full-time online student. And I ended up getting a bachelor's degree in theology from ORU, and I finished in about 3 years. So about a year early. And during the time while I was taking this online classes at ORU, really, I'd say freshman, sophomore year, I started to question everything that I was brought up with in evangelicalism, Christian fundamentalism. And the first thing I started to really question was the doctrine of hell, or specifically eternal conscious torment. And then that led to me questioning original sin. And then the eschatology stuff came up, and I realized that 2/3 of the New Testament is eschatological. So this is a big deal. So one rabbit hole led to the next. And I started this secret deconstruction journey where I was literally by myself. I couldn't tell anyone at my school, at my church, even my family. I couldn't tell anyone that I was questioning and that I was actually rethinking some of these doctrines that to me at the time were like absolute, fundamental, non-negotiable truths. But after about 3 years of doing this, while I was taking classes at ORU, I was at the same time like questioning everything and deconstructing. By the time I got to my senior year, which was my third year, I said, you know what? I can't hold this in anymore. And I said, I'm actually thinking about writing my senior paper as a refute against eternal conscious torment. And I thought about it and I said, I felt like I was so prepared. I felt like I had so much knowledge on this subject, and I was going to really present it with three different versions of the afterlife, the three main ones that we find in early Christianity, which are eternal conscious torment, conditional immortality, and universal restoration. And so that's what I based the paper off of. But I had enough courage to say, you know what, I'm going all in. I'm going to do this. I'm going to listen to my heart. I wrote the paper and I actually passed. I got a really good grade. not going to say that my professor agreed with me on the paper,
Yeah.
but I passed. And so after I wrote that paper, I fell in love with writing, and I started writing some blogs and some short writings to myself. But I was at a point where I was trying to decide if I was going to start making these writings public. I was trying to decide if I was going to start sharing my story with other people and what I had been questioning and these things I had been wrestling with. And after I graduated college and after I wrote this paper, and I was starting to slowly drift away from fundamentalism into more of a Christian mysticism and into more of Christian universalism. What I did was, after reading some of the mystics and some of the early church fathers and theologians, and after I was graduated from college, so I was no longer a part of ORU. I was no longer a part of the church that I was interning with. I had some distance and I felt, okay, I'm on my own now. I'm not under any pastor or anything like that anymore. So now I can start, if I feel led to, I can start sharing these things. And I did. And when I started sharing these writings on Facebook and these blogs and stuff like that, one thing led to the next. I ended up writing a book called The Mystery in You that talks about Christian mysticism and my new approach to Christianity, which really was,
What year was this?
this would have been 2022.
Okay. Okay. Couple
So
years.
yeah, 2 years ago, a
Yeah.
little over 2 years ago. So I wrote the book, and the book is basically about my experience with Christianity coming out of fundamentalism and having an encounter with Christ experientially by going within. And the Christian mysticism, and this is now I'm gonna start answering the question that the first question that Clarissa had. So the Christian mysticism for me was definitely a bridge. It was a way for me to move out of fundamentalism. And what really intrigued me about the Christian mystics was that they were going within to experience God. And at first, that revelation in and of itself, that God is within me and within everybody, was like the most amazing thing I'd ever heard, especially coming out of evangelicalism. And so I started entertaining this idea, started reading their writings, and I was just thrilled by this theology. However, even after writing the book, while I was writing the book, at the time, it was still just like a new theology. It was still a doctrine. And so it wasn't until after moving past writing the book and um, reading some more of the mystics and eventually reading and studying some of the traditions of the East, I would eventually discover meditation. And through meditation became my method to directly experience God within myself. So I had the theology, which was correct theology of God is within you, Christ is within you. But now I had the method, I had the vehicle to actually go within the depths of my being and have a direct life-changing experience that produced immense transformation in my life. And when this started to happen, it changed everything. And meditation became something that it went from being a practice to a lifestyle, to a way of being. And eventually I became a coach, a spiritual coach, and I'm working on my second book now. And I'm doing this for a living. This is what I feel like I'm here to do. I feel like this is
Yeah.
my calling. And it's simply showing people, number one, that what they've been searching for outside of themselves has always been hidden within them. And if they can learn how to transcend the mind, the analytical thinking mind, which distracts us from the truth of who we are, they can directly experience their true self, which is fundamentally one with God, and be transformed from the inside out. However, that process starts with a season of deprogramming. We have to let go of what we've been conditioned with in order for us to get there.
Yeah.
That's what I'm all about at this point. That's just a little bit about my journey. And yeah, I think that's how I look at Christianity. I see it now I don't believe Jesus came to start a religion. I believe he came to reveal the greatest truth of all time, which is that the kingdom is within us.
Yeah. The path, the way.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. Which I think is totally on board with that, that he came to show us the way and the truth and the life.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
it was all wrapped up in a man. I can choose to believe that God sent a man to encapsulate that and show us the way. That
Sure.
was the God. And it's a beautiful thing. I think people have really misconstrued what Jesus, like you said, they've created a religion around it, and that just doesn't, there's no life in that. But I think you're definitely onto something and onto what I've been doing as well. The meditation is key. I love to take people into that meditative space, and been doing it. Just did a retreat recently, and just the healing that people receive emotionally and physically. It's like when the body can be at rest and be at peace because you know that everything's okay, then that place of peace and rest, the body's, your immune system, everything's, hey, we're not fighting all the emotional crap that's usually going on.
Right.
We can go regenerate something. Let's go rebuild something. Yeah, so many healings take
Yeah.
place in that space.
Yeah.
Beautiful.
Yeah.
It does seem counterintuitive that the kingdom is within, and if God is all in all, it seems counterintuitive that you would have to go outside of yourself to experience that. Obviously, I think that goes over the head of a lot of believers, is that if all of this is within, the way to experience that is to go within. But meditation is a scary thing for
Hmm.
believers.
Hmm. Yeah. I know
Yeah,
for
it can be.
myself, it was like, and this is going to be different for each group within Christianity, but in many of the groups and communities I experienced, meditation was regarded as dangerous and demonic. And so it was just
Yeah.
like we didn't even pay any attention to it. We ignored it.
I just got off another group that I was sharing some things with, and the idea that I think if we're wise, when we sit down with somebody that we know is wiser than ourselves, that the ideal thing to do, if you have wisdom, is to listen. And
Mhm.
we've been taught in the Christian paradigm, for the most part, is you go and you just give him your laundry list of everything you want, everything you need. And it says very clearly in the Bible, yeah, all that. How about if you
Yeah.
go and listen? Because he's already got the answers. How about if you just listen? And sometimes, and like you said earlier, before we got started here, Logan, was that it's so beautiful to not have an agenda
Mhm.
and to really be able to go into that place of meditation with no agenda. Just, I'm here. I'm here.
Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely.
So, what are some of the things that you do when you're teaching your meditations? And what are some things that are important to you in sharing with people how to meditate or why to meditate?
For sure. I think the first thing is just like a healthy, clear explanation of what meditation is and what meditation is not. Because for many people, especially for people that have come out of some kind of religious fundamentalism, chances are they're going to have some kind of misconception about meditation. And the misconception in and of itself can be the very thing that prevents them from going into these deeper states of meditation when they start to meditate. And that was certainly the case for me. When I first started meditating, I had two main misconceptions about meditation. The first misconception was that meditation is all about trying to control your thoughts.
Hmm.
And the second misconception was that meditation is all about trying not to think about anything. If you start to meditate and you try to do those two things, good luck. You're not going to make it too far without being
Yeah.
extremely frustrated and discouraged because the mind doesn't work that way. If you try to fight the mind with the mind, it ends up being an endless cycle and you get worn out and you think, oh, meditation is not for me. I need to go try some other spiritual practice. So I think having some clarity from the beginning of, like I said, what it is, what it's not, and then getting over the misconceptions, which for a lot of people, the misconceptions I just shared are the same misconceptions they have. And so what I say is it's not about trying to control anything. It's about simply awareness. All I want you to do when you start to meditate is to simply become aware of your thoughts, feelings, emotions, sensations that are arising when you start meditating. And you need to sit back as the witness and just observe. And I often give the analogy of clouds passing in the sky. Let the thoughts, feelings, emotions, sensations, let them come into your awareness. And then don't cling to them. Don't freak out. Just watch them. And there's that old saying, this too shall pass. That's true for everything we can observe in this 3D material world. And so as these different feelings and thoughts and emotions and sensations come about in our meditation, treat them like clouds, treat them like leaves passing down a stream. And even if you get distracted by a thought and it starts to grab at you, that's fine. The moment that happens, just become aware. And then you're back into that witness, that observer. And I think the more one can just sit back and rest and be in that state of being, the more they are drawn into the deeper states of meditation. You can't get into the deeper states of meditation. You can only be pulled into the deeper states of meditation.
So good.
And the way you allow that pull to work is simply by letting go.
Mm-hmm.
That's the key. The more you let go, the more it slowly pulls you in like a river.
Welcome to The Gathering, where we come together to explore and activate the kingdom within. This is a community where everyone gets to participate and your voice matters. Our focus is on awakening to our true identity and shedding the world's programming, then stepping into the power and authority that we were meant to carry in the first place.
In Christ we find a new creation, a life of purpose and liberation. No longer slaves to sin's dark reign. We're free to love in Jesus' name.
Each week, we equip ourselves to rise above the darkness and reclaim the kingdom of love and bring that kingdom into this earth realm. Together, we're learning, growing, and living from the inside out and building a life and a community that reflects the fullness of God's kingdom. We hope you'll join us every week and bring your friends. Welcome to the journey.
In Christ we find a new creation, a life of purpose and liberation. No longer slaves to sin's dark reign. We're free to love in Jesus' name.
And I
Yeah.
think I've seen on some of your videos, breathing is important
Yeah.
as well. And
Yep.
And that breathing can help center. For me, it clears the thoughts. A breath, one breath alone, can clear a thought that's got stuck, it's got
Yeah.
lodged there. And it doesn't take much. But one of the things I was going to ask you, because I had just my personal revelation on the void. You heard a lot of people talk about the void,
Yeah.
that place of just nothingness. And I was never a big fan of that. For me personally, never a big fan of that. And then Father revealed to me something that I thought, that's cool. And I wrote a thing on Facebook about it. But it's just, as I'm leading people into meditation, a majority of the time is just getting them to let go, is getting them to that space and that place to where finally we're there. And it's just not just rest, just relax and just listen and just watch and feel and sense. But the void, what Father showed me, the void is the place where it's void of all the tethers and all the attachments of this realm. I'm like, now that makes sense. Because when you can finally disconnect from those things, to me, that's where Jesus said, there's nothing in me that the enemy can hook into. Can't yank
Mm.
my chain right now. When we get into that space and that place in meditation where we've been able to let go of all those things, whatever they might be, then now you're free. Now you're free because there's nothing that the world can hook into and start yanking your chain, trying to draw you back out of that deep meditation. So yeah, we spend a lot of time going through that process, and that's through the breathing, through letting go, and then you reach that place in the void. And I'm like,
Yeah.
for me, that makes sense. That makes
Yeah. Yeah. And a lot of people think that the void is just like boring and nothingness, and it is nothingness to a degree. But the way I like to look at the void is infinite potential. That's where the magic happens. And so it's that state of consciousness that says, or that realizes that who I am is beyond the body, beyond the mind, beyond the ego, beyond space, and beyond time. It's pure spirit, infinite potential.
Love that. So when we get to that space, I haven't done it with my inner circle groups as much, but I've done it with a few of them and with the retreat we just did. And that's having the time for 4 days to be able to just go deeper and deeper, that when we get to that space, like you said, it's the infinite potential. It's okay. Now you're in that space. Now look around to see what the
Mm,
universe is offering you. Because those
yeah.
are the things where I do a little exercise. It's okay. If you see something that you think belongs to you, that's where go ahead and gently, you're not taking it by force. You just, oh, that's supposed to be mine. Just pull it into your heart. Because for me, pulling it into the heart is now transforming it, transmuting it from the spiritual realm into the physical, because now you're going to bring it back. When
Yeah.
you come back, you're bringing it with you in your heart, and now you begin to manifest it. But it's all there in that void. Everything. I don't believe
Yeah.
that we create. I don't believe that we create or co-create. It's already there.
Already there.
Accepting it.
Amen. I agree. Yeah. It's about aligning with that reality, with that frequency, which meditation, that's what meditation helps us to do when we get into that void. And so much of it is simply going beyond the mind. People are stuck in their thinking minds, in the egoic mind, and they live
Totally.
life too small, too limited. And that's why identity is so
Agreed.
important, knowing who you really are. So many people are stuck and they identify themselves with their thoughts, with their minds. And that's why I think that,
Programming.
yeah, programming, subconscious programming, the greatest shift of all time is simply the shift from the head space into the heart space. The heart space is where we enter into that void and where we are transformed from the inside out. Yeah, and then I've always said anything you could ever want, dream for, ask for, or believe for is already in
Come on.
existence in the kingdom of God, in the kingdom of heaven, right? Now, the question is, where is the kingdom of heaven? It's within
Yeah.
you, in the heart. So that's the way I like to look
Beautiful.
at it. Yeah.
Beautiful. Yeah. Love that. Claryssa, I know you got more questions.
I don't really have a question. But the comment about making it a lifestyle rather than just an experience, because it is difficult to make it be a lifestyle and not just have these little small moments where you have an experience, because life is just, and we've set it up this way, life is demanding, and through work, through having children, and then whatever each individual's home life looks like, it is hard to incorporate, to actually make it be a lifestyle where you stay to a degree in that space as you are going about your daily, just your daily life. So I was going to make that comment. And then the comment that when you have had that experience, you learn things about yourself and you learn things about the Father that cannot be taken from you. Whatever religion would tell you or whatever the church would tell you. And this has been my experience, that the moments that I experienced true union, where it was God and I face to face, and he's telling me something about me, or he's telling me something about himself, or if I've gone to him with a problem, I'm going through something and I need guidance. Those experiences have been what has shifted, what has moved my needle. And you can't get that by going to a church service. You can't get that by going to a Bible study. You can get good information, but the transformational change comes from those meditative moments. So it really is necessary to incorporate it into being a lifestyle. I find it difficult. I find it difficult to stay in that place.
Yeah. I
That
think,
is that. Go
oh,
ahead.
go ahead, Gil.
No, go ahead, Logan.
Okay. Yeah. I was just saying, I think, like I said, meditation is more of a lifestyle than a practice. That's true, but it is also a practice. And so I think the way I look at it is my daily practice of meditation is training on how to live. Okay. So let's say I'm meditating for 20 minutes in the morning. While I'm meditating, one of the things I forgot to bring up earlier when you were asking me about meditation, Gil, was this technique called the primary object technique, which you're probably familiar with. And basically, it's just when you're meditating, you have one thing that you're focused on. And what that does to the mind is it helps the mind become quiet, it helps the mind become still. And when you're focused on one thing, the primary object, all these other things and thoughts that are trying to distract us during meditation start to fade away. And then what happens is as you meditate and as you go from beta into alpha, the mind will sometimes drift away from that primary object. But when that happens, you just simply bring your awareness back to the primary object. And for me, in my experience, I think following the breath, like you were saying, breath work, that is the most helpful primary object for me. Now, it can be anything that works best for you. It can be a mantra, it can be saying a scripture or an affirmation, or simply like staring at a candle flame. A lot of people do that and they say it works great. But it's one thing that you're focused on. And then, like I said, if the mind starts to wander, you don't freak out, don't judge yourself, just relax, simply bring your awareness back to the primary object. Now, if you do that every day or 5 days a week for 20 minutes in the morning, what happens is you're literally training your brain, you're training your body on how to stay grounded. And so that's the practice. But then after the practice, you start your day, you go to work, you have meetings, you are running errands, you're going about your life, and things come up, right? Things come up that will try to grab at us, that will try to take us away from being centered and grounded and having that state of being of peace, right? And so when these things come up, instead of reacting from the ego, which is a state of unconsciousness, if we're training ourselves to be centered from the heart space and we are practicing the primary object technique every day in meditation, then what happens is when these things come up in life, we notice them. And if it requires us to act or respond, we do that. However, we're not controlled by those things. We're not attached to those things. And we stay grounded as we navigate through life and as these things try to distract us and try to take us off the path. And so that's the practice of meditation. That's what it's training us to do. That's how it's training us to live. Because when you are rooted in your being and spirit and you're living from that place, then naturally you're going to start to produce the fruits of the spirit without trying to produce the fruits of the spirit because you're living from being instead of from doing. Again, that's why the practice is, I think, essential. It's necessary, but we don't end with the practice because meditation in and of itself goes way beyond any kind of practice or technique or method. It is a way of life. It is a way of being. And although Jesus didn't mention the word meditation, I think he was pointing us to a lifestyle that we would get from meditation, a way of being.
Yeah.
No, I think that's the perfect answer. And I know that listeners, that would be the first response is, how am I supposed to do this in my daily life? Because I have all of these demands and I have these things that are constantly pulling at me. So I think your answer was perfect.
Yeah. But that's the key. It's not a doing. That's the mind is trying to figure out, okay, how do I do this? But it's not a doing. It's being, which comes from you practicing in meditation, which comes from an expansion of consciousness, but it's a flow, it's a grace. And then you start to walk in it, things come up. And instead of responding or reacting from the ego, you're bringing the light of your awareness into every situation and you're responding with clarity and love and peace. And that's the sign of a truly transformed person.
Right. Good.
And that's the beauty of it is when we have practiced to where the consciousness has expanded to where we are aware of our responses, of our actions. You're actually aware of the event that's taking place. So the whatever the thing is, it's coming from the outside. You are very aware of it even as it's approaching. The red flag is when it hits us and we react. It's like, oh, there's something in me that I've not let go of yet.
Yeah.
And what we want to do, or we want to reach that place where the event from the outside comes and it has no effect, because we are
Mhm.
able to, I call it the spiritual aikido, being able to just step
Yeah.
aside and let it
Yeah.
flow, and it doesn't
Yeah.
catch us. Too many
Yeah.
times something's an event is coming and it has really nothing to do with you in so many ways, but because it hits something in you that you haven't dealt with, you haven't let go of,
Yeah.
and all of a sudden you've grabbed onto it, and now it's an issue, and it could be the straw that breaks the camel's back, that all
Yeah.
that stuff that you've had in there, like a
Oh,
jack in the box,
yeah.
you know, just sitting there waiting. And at some point, one thing from the outside comes, and if you don't want that, then it really is important to begin these meditation practices and to start letting these things go. We spend a lot of time in our meditations just letting things go. Sometimes we don't even know what we're letting go of. It's just you have the sense, it's let go, let go. Just keep letting things go. And it's beautiful. It really is. Because you become more aware in your daily life, like you said, rather than responding out of ego, you catch yourself immediately. It's like you sense it because your consciousness is aware now. You sense the ego trying to rise up and wants to respond, and instead you step back and you just step back into peace. And that peace. That peace to me is the pearl of great price.
Mhm.
It's what I would sell everything for and do everything in order to enter into that space and place of the peace. And I think once people experience it, yeah, everybody wants to go back. Everybody wants to learn how to live in that space and that place. It
Yeah. It's the peace that surpasses all understanding.
Right.
is. It is.
Yeah. Oh.
So, Logan, how do people get a hold of you? I think you mentioned your book. How do people reach out to you if they want to?
Yeah. So I have my website, which is loganbarone.com, and pretty much everything is on there. All the links to my different social media accounts and email and all of that can be found on my website.
Okay. Okay. Very good. And you're on Facebook as well.
Yeah, I'm on Facebook. I've got a YouTube channel. I'm on Instagram, but I just started a new account, so I'm trying to grow that. And yeah, that's Facebook and YouTube are my main social media platforms right now.
Yeah.
Yep.
Well, what else would you share with us? What else you feel has really been powerful in your transformation process that people might need to be aware of that might come in their transformation?
Yeah. In the Gospel of Thomas, saying number 2, Jesus says something like, whoever seeks should not stop seeking until they find. And when they find, they'll be troubled. And then after being troubled, they'll be amazed and astonished, and then they'll reign over the all. And when I first read that, I was like, this is the most mystical thing I've ever read. But it touched the deepest part of my being, and it just resonated with me on a completely different level more than anything. And I started to meditate just on that saying alone. And what it revealed to me was that in that little bitty saying number 2 of the Gospel of Thomas, Jesus actually outlines the entire process of the spiritual journey, which starts with you seeking. It starts with curiosity. To me, that's actually when the journey really starts. When you become okay with not knowing and you have this passion and desire to want to question and to want to learn. And when you start that path, then all of a sudden you start to realize that, okay, this involves a lot more unlearning than learning and a lot more unknowing than knowing. And that's where the humility has to be there. If there's no humility, then the journey's not for you. And so when you start to let go of all of the different things that you were programmed with and you start to rethink, you start to question, you get to this place of being honest with yourself where you say, you know what, I really don't know anything. And this is what the mystics talk about, the space of not knowing instead of knowing. And so this is when you start a practice like meditation or some kind of, the mystics would they practice contemplative prayer, where the goal in this is to shift from intellectual knowing into experiential knowing. Okay.
Mhm.
So when you let everything go and you're trying to like figure out what to do with this void, with this space, with this empty space, with this nothingness, this is when you start meditating. However, during this time, it will be like hell. It will be challenging because, especially if you're someone who was brought up with religious doctrines and fundamentalism, what happens when someone has been programmed in that world is that typically the doctrines of that system become attached to that person's identity. So
Yeah.
they are what they believe. They are what they believe. That's why deconstructing is so challenging for so many people, because it's like losing a part of yourself.
Right.
Okay. That's the trouble that Jesus, I think, points to in saying number 2. That's the trouble that you experience after you start to find. St. John of the Cross, who was a Christian mystic, he talks about the dark night of the soul, which is this season of being in between letting go of who you think you are and discovering who you really are. It's that in between season. But once you find and once you go through that season of being troubled and you start to experience who you really are, and this is when you're astonished, you're amazed. And then Jesus says in that last line, you'll reign over the all. What does that actually mean? I think what he means by that is you'll realize that when you discover who you really are as being divine, as being spirit, as being pure awareness, then you realize that you can create your own reality. You can manifest your deepest desires, and you can be the light of the world and transform everything around you. That's what reigning over the all means. Okay. It's not like it doesn't mean that there's this hierarchy structure. And no, it means you can create your own reality, but you're creating it not from the ego. You're creating it from love. You're creating it from your true self, which is divine. And this is what it means to be the light of the world. We know Jesus said it in John 8:12. He said, I am the light of the world. Great. Awesome. But he also tells his disciples in Matthew 5 that they are the light of the world.
Yes. Yeah.
That's the gospel.
Have you ever contemplated the power of choice in your life? Enter the world of Gil Hodges' new book, Choice. It unveils the profound impact of our decisions, beginning with a revelation about the significance of choice. Choice is not just an action, it's a revelation. The journey starts here with the challenges that hinder our decision-making abilities. We move through life, navigating its intricate labyrinth. Along the way, we encounter revelations about how our agreements set the course of our existence. We delve into the duality of good and evil, their role in divine perception, and the art of letting go to flow with the life Father has designed you for. This journey is not just about surviving, but thriving. It's about making choices that resonate with your higher self and divine grace. What does choosing the good life mean to you? It's about selecting joy even in the face of adversity. It's about responding with love when confronted with hostility. It's about forgiving, not just others, but yourself too. It's about living free from the shackles of condemnation, judgment, and comparison. Gil Hodges' Choice provides practical and spiritual insights to guide you on this path. Ultimately, choosing the good life is about embracing expectancy of all things good. Choice. Choice is a powerful tool, a catalyst for change. In the pages of Gil Hodges' book, Choice, we discover this transformative power. The choices we make shape our lives, nudging us from the precipice of mere survival into the embrace of thriving. When we choose love over judgment, forgiveness over resentment, and joy over despair, we are choosing to align with our perfected self in Christ. Choice encourages us to make these life-altering decisions, to choose a life of honor, expectancy, and divine grace. Your journey toward a life filled with joy, love, and purpose is just a choice away. Are you ready to harness the power of choice? Let Gil Hodges's enlightening book, Choice, guide you on a journey of profound understanding and a deeper spiritual walk with God. Don't just survive, thrive. Make choices that resonate with who you are meant to be. Embark on your journey today. Gil's book can be found on Amazon.
So to go right along with that, Claryssa's heard me say this a million times on flow. And I don't have this in my book, but it's something I do share in the inner circle groups. But the flow for me has always been an acronym. And it's frequency, luminate, openness, and wake. And it's a boat wake, like a wave. But what you just shared there is really right on, because the frequency is all about finding what I call a pace of peace, which is where we slow down and we begin to align with who God says we are. So there's a frequency that we need to step into. And it's usually, for almost everybody, it's a matter of slowing down and hearing and listening and being in that place where I can hear what Father's saying about me and I can walk that out. So that frequency. And once that happens, then he illuminates us. We become the light. We are that light. When we are operating in who we truly are, we become the light. And what that does is it brings an openness to the universe to where everything that I need to do what I'm here to do, I don't have to strive, I don't have to fight for it, I don't have to, none of that. It will be drawn to me. There's that openness. When I'm aligned with who he says he is, I light up. As a light, I draw all people, or all, not all people, all things that I need. And all people. I will draw all people that I need.
Sure.
That their part is part of my part, and I'm part of their part, in order to accomplish what we're here to do. And then the wake is the ripple effect of my life. Now that I am my true self, my authentic self, and I am moving through space and time, I am creating a ripple effect where I am affecting everything around me with the truth of who I am. And I'm not doing necessarily anything. I'm simply being who I've been called to be. And it's a beautiful space, beautiful place.
Yeah, that's it.
Yeah.
That's the good news.
Yeah, we'll have to talk more, because this is actually the first time we've connected. And again, Claryssa, thank you so much for arranging this.
Yeah.
It's been really good. But once I hopefully get my retreat center set up, I have to see about doing something together. It'd be cool.
Absolutely. Yeah.
A
It's
week
very
meditation.
exciting. Yeah.
It'd be cool.
Awesome.
Anything else, Claryssa? You got any other thoughts and questions?
I would be curious to know how, Logan, how do you see, since you're obviously further down and I don't even like the term deconstruction, but I use it because that seems to be just the term that it is. But as more people come into this, and I've had a similar journey, Gil's had a similar journey as you. And I think most everybody starts very privately and they don't feel like they can share it anywhere for a long time until you realize there actually is a community out there where you can talk about this. But looking into the future, since you've been involved in this for a while, how do you see this changing on a larger scale instead of one-on-one and changing individually? How do you see this changing really what the body looks like? Because as the body changes, then culture change, what it looks like in the culture and what humanity at large. So do you have any thoughts on what 10 years from now or 20 years from now, what this would look like rather than just staying deconstruction?
Sure. Yeah, there has to be reconstruction on the other side of any kind of deconstruction. And I think for a lot of people, when they do start the deconstruction journey, typically it involves them leaving their previous spiritual community. A lot of times that's what it looks like. That's what it looked like for me. And then what happens is you enter into this like wilderness season where you're by yourself, and maybe you lose friends, you lose relationships that were built for years, and it's sad. And that's part of life. That's part of the journey, especially when you're deconstructing. However, although the season of solitude, I think, is necessary to a degree when awakening, we're not meant to stay in solitude unless you're a hermit or some kind of monk. That's what you're supposed to do. For most people, we're meant for community, right? It's what we're wired for, and it's actually how we grow and evolve spiritually. After that season of being by yourself, which, like I said, is essential, It's where the most amount of transformation happens within yourself, and you become the light of the world and you start to shine. What's going to happen at this point is, I believe, if you listen to the spirit's guidance within you, the spirit will start to lead you into these new relationships, into these new communities where you will have opportunities to join something that is bigger than yourself. And it doesn't have to look like organized religion. Okay. So what happens now when you start to join a group with like-minded people who are on similar paths and who have similar intentions, and you start to meet with them and you're just simply being with them and you're meditating with them and you're experiencing these higher levels of consciousness with them, what happens is, and a lot of people don't realize this, but this isn't talked about enough, but when you meet with people and you gather together and you meditate, and there's this coherence, what happens is there is literally a frequency that's created by the group that expands beyond the group into the world around them. And it changes places, it changes cities, it can change the world. And I really do believe, and I don't know the exact reference where this is in scripture, but the verse that says, where two or more are gathered, there I am. Like, there's something profound to that, that has nothing to do with going to a building on Sunday.
Right,
Nothing.
right.
Has nothing to do with listening to a 30-minute message and worshiping for 4 songs or whatever. No, that has so much more to do with being in the presence of other people who, like I said, are on similar paths, who have awakened, and we're coming together. And when you join frequencies and that energy is being just built up and it's expanding, that's when we can actually change the world. And there will be a shift in the collective consciousness of humanity.
Which I believe
So,
that's happening.
oh, yeah.
I think it's happening already, but I think we're going to see an acceleration of that.
Yeah.
And again, the news wants us to believe that the world's going to hell in a handbasket and all that, and it's just ignore that.
Yeah, you
No.
got to get off the news.
You got to get
Yeah.
off the news.
That's
And
part of
it's
the
just-
programming.
It is. It is. Yeah, your family is programming, your church is programming, your work is programming, your college is programming, driving down the road is programming. You see the billboards.
Yeah.
It's programming us everywhere. But when we become aware and we become awake, then we get to choose. Okay, I'll receive that programming. It'll be good for me. That, no longer any good for me. I'm going to start letting that one go. It's just the awakening process is important. And the term I like as far as deconstructing and reconstructing, Paul Young uses the word renovation. And I do
Yeah.
like renovation.
Yeah.
That we tear everything down that's not working anymore. We hold on to the foundation, whatever that might be,
Mhm.
and you begin to rebuild. And,
Beautiful.
It's good.
yeah, it is. Okay, we're gonna go ahead and wrap this section up. And Logan, we're all gonna hang on here. And I just wanted to tell everybody thank you for watching. So appreciate each and every one of you and your support. KingdomTalksMedia.com is a place to go to if you want to continue supporting this ministry or start supporting it if you haven't. Would love that. We are listener supported, so appreciate each and every one of you for that. And what you get on the KingdomTalksMedia.com website is you'll get the deeper dive, which we're going to do next. We're going to spend a few minutes going deeper down a rabbit hole. I don't know which rabbit hole yet, but we're going to go deeper down a rabbit hole and share some things that public might not be ready for it, but we're going to talk about some other things here in just a moment. So blessings, everyone. Claryssa, thank you so much for this interview, this time with Logan. And Logan, honor you and thank you for coming and joining us. And we'll look forward to more in the future. All right, blessings, everybody. And we will see you all next time.